Welcome everyone to the nightly Q&A for the 2022 Blood in the Snow Film Festival presented by Superchannel. I'm your host, Rob Bellamy, host of Bits Radio. You can hear this show and many others at www.bitsradio.ca. But for this festival, we are Bits TV, and we are here with some of the people from the film Follow Her, and festival director Kelly Michael Stewart.
Hey there.
How is everybody tonight?
Great. Yeah, I'm good.
Very excited. Yeah, happy to be in this great festival.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. What we'll do, Sylvia, we'll start with you. If we can give you just an introduction and your part in the production.
Sure. So I'm Sylvia Kaminer, and I directed and produced Follow Her. Do you want me to tell you? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just I don't know if you want me to give a little background on the film, or I'll let Danny introduce herself.
Okay. And then we'll come back to you.
Sounds good.
I'm Danny, and I wrote Follow Her. I also produced it with Sylvia, and I star in the film.
Excellent. So, Sylvia, tell me a bit about the background of the film.
Yeah. So Danny and I met several years ago. She was looking for a director and a producer, and she reached out to a good kind of a mentor of mine, John Gallagher, was pretty legendary in the New York City indie film world. And so John put us together. And so as soon as I read the script, I was very, very intrigued. I thought, wow, this is a talented writer. She's wrote a hell of a role for herself. And I wanted to dig in and learn more. So we kind of got on a phone call and decided to jump off this cliff and make this movie.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very relevant topic. Is that, how did you come up with the idea to use social media to get into this situation?
So the social media aspect of the film actually didn't come in till quite a bit later. So the first few drafts was really written as a 2-person script in one location. And the whole purpose of that, you know, as indie filmmakers, you have to write something that is attainable to shoot and fund. So that was really the impetus for the idea. And then as we were building out, or as I was building out Jess's backstory and giving her more life and figuring out who she is in this world, then the social media aspect came in. And then when I met Sylvia, we developed it even further and brought in the whole live streaming because we wanted to make it current. And I did Starvival, which is a web series for many, many years, which was all recorded, but I had never explored the whole live streaming component. So that was new and exciting and a whole other challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember watching your. I did used to watch Starvival all the time, actually, and it was really interesting to see what some of the trials and tribulations that you would do. And I was like, when I was first watching the movie, I'm like, wow, this is like kind of autobiographical of like all the crazy people that you would meet on there to like that too, because. And I think this story is very relatable to a lot of our alumni and a lot of actors that I talk to that have to jump through these crazy hoops sometimes to push their career forward and things like that. And there's always a balancing act of like compromising your values and your safety with trying to move forward with your career in such a strange world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I lived that way, going paycheck to paycheck for so long too, where it was literally just scouring Craigslist jobs and going from job to job and allowing that to pay my rent.
The one thing that's interesting in the social media aspect of it as well, and I spoke with Gigi Salguero on this when she was at Bits a bit ago, is the fact that living on social media, you suddenly become a person in someone else's life. And then you have these people come up and talk to you like they've known you for years and you're meeting them for the first time. Mm-hmm. Does that ever, throw you off?
Not for me. It doesn't throw me off. But I think what's really interesting, I was reading about this recently, is this idea that your audience starts to dictate who you become. Like you can lose yourself in that world. And I find that really compelling, especially around social media stars. What choices are actually yours or what choices are being dictated by what your audience likes, and continuing to move that direction and how you can kind of lose your identity in that. We didn't go as deep into that in the film, but I just find that whole idea really interesting.
Yeah.
And I will say, sorry, I'll just add to that real quickly. I will say there was some influence of that doing Starvival as well. because really you're playing, it's like a numbers game, right? Around viewership and likes and comments. And so you are playing those cards. Oh, people are really liking this type of content, so let me do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what I noticed too was, I noticed too was interesting with the film was the power structure that got the two. There's a certain point where you think it's just simply a case of her getting out of this dangerous situation, and then there's that moment like, no, I'm gonna try and turn this here and play it to my own advantage. And you don't really know at that point. You almost don't even know who the protagonist antagonist is at that point, because really interesting.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
neutral. Yeah.
There were moments too that felt almost like, and I compare this very humbly to Scream, because you guys were referencing, yes, but if I was the killer, blah blah blah, like you're bringing that into it. Did Scream have any influence on this, or was that just an amazing coincidence?
It definitely did for me. Sorry, I'll let you.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Sylvia. I was just going to say Scream 4 particularly did, because it takes place on a set and it's very meta in that. So for me, I was rewatching that film while writing this.
Oh, interesting. I don't even remember Scream 4. I mean, there was a little bit of the Scream 1, kind of that cat and mouse thing, and just it was pretty scary. And her alone, and just the very meta, and the talk of like bringing in horror tropes into the script, and that was something I really liked about the script that Danny wrote, was making it kind of like poking fun at itself, and there's a couple of lines specifically that really call it out, and some pretty funny results from it.
With the script itself, was there ever anything that you wanted to put into it, but you didn't for time constraints or budget constraints or anything like that?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Because I know sometimes the vision we have in our head, we can't always put on paper. And then if we do put on paper, we can't always put on the screen. So I was just curious.
I don't think there was anything that we lost. I'd say we shot some stuff that we didn't end up using. So it was the opposite that happened.
But that was just for timing. It wasn't like we didn't accomplish something on a budget that we had to cut, right? But I don't think there was ever something where I had to be like, oh shoot, Dana, we got to rethink this because we can't afford to do it. No, I think we captured everything that was.
Exactly, because when you know what you're setting out to do. I mean, initially the whole plan for this was to shoot it for under $100,000. So really, I had to write everything to be under that budget mark.
Yeah, it grew many multiples of that.
Well, when you finally got to the time of shooting, like roughly how long was the shoot for this? I can't picture it, like maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we shot about 12 days for the stuff that all happens in the barn, which is about 50 minutes of the movie, and then like another 6 days, which is very quick, 18 days, and then a few second unit days, so probably 18, and then like 4 days were the very, pared down crew, grabbing some of just the on the street stuff. Yeah.
And I have to ask, the location you had, that barn, I thought that was so unique because, again, it looks like a barn, but it's a house designed inside. Obviously very unique. Did you have that location before doing your final script, or did you adjust as you were filming? Because a lot of the location stuff seems very specific.
A little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd written the script and we were, developing it, and we had one barn which ended up falling through. And then when we found the other barn, I think we adjusted a little bit because like the bedroom was upstairs, and you have those little types of adjustments. And then we actually stayed in one of the apartments, Jess's second apartment, the kind of like scaled down apartment. That's where we lived in that for a whole month while getting ready to shoot those days. And then so that was written very specifically for that location, that long hallway. And
I just caught something you said. You said your first one fell through. You actually found another house built into a barn?
And it was gorgeous. It was a lot smaller though, so it
would have
really
worked as
tight.
Well.
That's crazy.
You just have to just do a Google search on upstate New York converted barns.
Really? It's a thing. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, actually. Because
But
outside, it's very
one of the influences too was a year before I'd even started writing the script, I had visited a friend's converted barn, and I remember being there saying, I have to write a horror film that takes place here, and I want it to be some kind of writer's retreat or something that happens in this converted barn. And so it's funny that you don't even realize sometimes. It'll be like a year goes by, and then all of a sudden I realize, wow, I have the location for this movie, and I had forgot that I found it. But then by that point, I was like, that location actually wouldn't have worked because it needed so much work on it. And so that's when we started looking
Oh,
upstate.
that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have the budget to like, do too much redesign or decoration. We had a brilliant production designer, Noah Bricklin, and she really took that space and made every inch of it special. And we found great local art, an artist who allowed us to use his artwork, throughout the film. And it really added a texture to those scenes and to the story and just the mood of that space.
Yeah, Scott Ackerman is his name. He is
wonderful,
wicked talented. And it's all his art throughout the movie.
Oh, really? That's nice.
And he's a Kingston, New York artist.
When you can collaborate like that on a production, it not only saves on the budget, but it helps push other people in that same area.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's really cool.
Yeah.
Now with oh my gosh, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember the name of the gentleman.
Luke Cook.
There we go. Was he always your first pick? Because he seems to own that role. Very coy, very,
Yeah, and it's a danger. And the thing is, too, it's kind of dangerous when you have such a small cast and a small thing where it's really dependent on the chemistry between the two of you, and also that you have to have both chemistry, but also that tension as well. And that's a very, very delicate balance to do.
Was he always your pick for that? Because he, like I said, he owned that.
He's so great. Yeah, I can't even imagine the film without him. I mean,
No.
we didn't know of Luke Cook until our casting director, Judy Henderson, started bringing in, we did auditions. And so he sent us a tape, and we'd made a couple of pie in the sky offers to big actors. But as soon as Danny and I saw his, he just rose to the top. And we're like, okay, we know we have it, Tom. Like, he would be brilliant. And we couldn't get him out of our head, really. We're like, he's so interesting, and he's got everything you'd be looking for in that role. And right, I mean, I know it was like that for me. I know you felt the same.
100%. He blew us away. But from the first time, I mean, and I hear this too as an actor, but like the first 10 seconds of that audition tape, like he just had it. He had it all he was the character through and through. So there was no question. Yeah.
So have you ever thought about exploring this, follow her universe any further? Because I love the definite ending, but it's still very ambiguous. There's lots of play.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. We've been talking about that a lot, actually, about the idea of a sequel, about the idea of a trilogy.
It would even make a great series. I mean, there's so much you could do with this. It's just figuring out. We're independent filmmakers, so we need to get with a streamer or because there's so much. Yeah, I mean, it really we at every festival we've ever screened at. That's one of the first comments that people make is there going to be a part 2? How do we keep the story alive? So we would love that. Yeah,
I could really see a series for this too. Like I could really just see different perspectives, and then people kind of crossing over and stuff like that too.
Right.
Just, like, you could have one storyline that where like someone's following somebody else, and then they show up in another one. Yeah.
Right. Totally. And that whole, which we won't give away, but there's this whole twist about what's really going on in that world. This could happen to a lot of different people. Yeah, it could be. Let's hope that comes out.
Knock on wood.
Well, I think it's because it really I think it really affects people in a big way. We had a lot of submissions this year, and I think that's a compliment that you're doing something very topical. Is that there is a lot of that is and it's all done in different ways. Like your film is very different than any other one's submissions that we got. I don't want to say that, but it definitely is like we see, obviously in horror, we see different trends and stuff like that and different things. And I want to say trends because you're not getting on a bandwagon, but just sort of like, more of like, I find horror really reflects the society of like what we're going through. For example, like the Saw torture porn thing was really a reflection of what was going on in Iraq at the time and things like that. And that kind of so there's always like a social reaction, just like Night of the Living Dead was a social reaction to civil rights. I think the whole social media and how we put ourselves on that is so important right now and so topical that I think it's kind of like it's very, very current. And I think that's really kind of, I think people are really responding to that.
Yeah, definitely.
I know one of the big things too is, and I've mentioned this on a couple other podcasts, where it seems like almost every idea has been used in some way, shape, or form. So it's taking that idea and twisting it, which you guys did brilliantly with the two people alone in a house, stalking each other. How can we make it unique? And by adding, like Kelly said, the topical, social media aspect to it, you just blew the doors off of it.
Well, I think what was so interesting to us too in the script is this idea of that line that you have to toe of going too far, of taking things too far. And I know I definitely treaded that line back in the day, in the early days of YouTube of asking myself, like, did I go too far? Like, did I offend?
Right.
I mean, I was pretty offensive in my web series. It's not appropriate for today's world, but it was acceptable at the time.
Right.
And that's what it was. But I think there's just this idea of like redemption from that and the consequences of it. And so I found that part of the story really interesting, which is tricky when you're writing that character because she's not making the best choices. And then we had to look, really in depth around how do we make this character likable? Everybody wants a likable character, but still make her flawed enough that she's human and still has to carry the film. And that's a really tough balance because especially in today's world, a lot of people are writing really heroic female characters and those start to become its own stereotype and cliche. So writing a female character who still has those flaws is a really tough balance.
Well, it's relatable too, because meeting a man alone in the woods on a picnic table, is that bad? Oh, 100%. But how many YouTubers out there do you know that would do that if they thought they would get an amazing post?
Of course they would.
Well,
that's part
you have
of
basically the modern equivalent of "Don't go up there." Is like that kind of like that too. Is by meeting this guy on unsupervised in the country, and as that equivalent of "Don't go up into the empty attic" kind of thing like that too. It's like that, and it has to be just enough that that she could be in danger, but also make it plausible, like why she would actually go through with that.
Right. Well, and that was a big part of the journey, was making it believable that she would take that next step. So we needed to give her up her stakes and give her a desperation that she had to keep going and that she needed this to be a hot story. And it was funny because, I'm very much a believer in sharing your film before you lock picture and getting some feedback from people you trust. And it was funny, most of the men that watched it and early on were like, and this was so strange, it was the men and not the women. The women were like, oh yeah, I would have followed him. And it was men like, oh no, I don't know. Would she really go? And I'm like, well, I don't know if you're putting your girlfriend, your daughter, into that. And so you don't want to believe that she would actually follow him. But most women that saw it, nobody had that question because they're like, that guy, for the situation she was in, and he was just charming enough, and it was daytime still, and he was, he seemed cultured and intelligent, and so it was a nice balance, and that thing about you were just talking about, Danny, about a flawed character, I think right now is so important, that female characters are honest and real and not just heroic. And that I know that's one of the things that really drew me to this script was, a morally questionable, young woman and making choices that aren't always the most honorable choices, but it's also showing you how easily, if you keep moving what's morally acceptable to you just a little bit at a time, you soon have crossed over that line, and it's very hard to come back from.
If you keep moving the line, though, you've never really crossed it.
Well, right, but then if you go back, you're like, oh yeah,
Fair
enough. Line was back there. Yeah, but true.
All right, everybody at home, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed not only the film but our little Q&A here. If you'd like to hear what these ladies are going to continue talking about, tune into bitsradio.ca and hear the rest of this. But for now, enjoy the rest of the festival, and thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
And now we're into podcast territory. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you, Danny, when you were writing this, because obviously you wrote it, like you said, for yourself to get a good character, was there any challenges you wrote into this role knowing you were going to be doing it?
I mean, yes, I wrote it in a way that was challenging for me to be in, for sure. I'd also taken a break from the industry. I basically took like a mental health break for 2 years and completely removed myself from the industry entirely. Like I had no connection to it. Yeah, it was honestly one of the best things that I've ever chosen to do, and I highly recommend it, because that same idea that you can lose your identity in this industry, especially as an actor. You're just going from audition to audition. You're always chasing the next thing. There's never time, maybe you land a role and you have a little bit of breathing room to relax, but then again, you're chasing the next job. At least it felt like that for me. And it just came to a point where I burnt out, but not even so much burnt out. I needed to take a break to assess my morals in the industry and what I actually wanted from it.
That's great.
No, and I've obviously talked to so many filmmakers and so many actors almost on a daily basis, and so many that are close friends of mine. And it's such a common problem of that burnout, of that kind of like, always kind of chasing something like that. And that's why I said to our program, it's like, this is so relatable. This film is so relatable to so many people in our industry, and kind of that too. And just how you can kind of lose yourself. I mean, even on a personal note, when I first started getting into this 12, 13 years ago, I was really pushing myself as a brand at the time, and kind of think now it's more about the festival, not so much about me. But in the early days, I was really pushing that. And then you're always pushing that good news, everything good news. And then you start, and after a while, I was really getting depressed a lot. And it was like, maybe I think I'm kind of losing myself later. And I'm not really, because I wasn't lying about anything, but I was just kind of doing like everything that was going good in my life and not bad. And then I did a post, and I think you can relate to this, is I did a post about, it's nice to be really successful. I was honestly meeting a lot of famous people, writing for Fangoria and all this kind of stuff. And then, but I was really poor and I could barely make rent and kind of thing like that. And I did like a really honest post one day on Facebook, and you wouldn't believe the comments and people that messaged me privately appreciating that. And that kind of changed everything from that point on. And I really made a point of peppering it with some, not so much good news stuff, kind of like that too, just to kind of give a bit more of a balance. And it was good, I think also good for other people, but it was also good for myself. I was being a bit more, it was a bit more thing, but a little bit of a little backstory.
I love that.
But I wanted to say that because that's how I connected to the film, was on that level.
Yeah. Wow. And I feel like that's a life battle. That's for the rest of our lives, trying to figure out the balance of, of being honest to the public and opening yourself up to feedback from strangers, and posting the good stuff, because it's like they say, Instagram is a highlight reel. It's all highlights of our lives, but where's the truth in all of that? And I still personally really battle with that, with the whole idea of social media and what's real and not real, and playing that game. Because even Sylvia and I are always being advised to post as much as possible and get everything out there about the film, and it's all about the film. And I get tired of it, and I'm like, I don't want to post the film anymore.
I would love nothing more than to do your hiatus from social media.
It's a necessary evil now.
And it's I wish it would go away, but it won't. So we have to embrace it, and it's at least become a little less daunting, but it's most of us just want to make movies. I didn't sign up to become a marketer. That's not my strength. I don't know. How do I, take what I did, what's a 93-minute film that we worked on for years, and tell it to you in one sentence? Like, that's not our strength necessarily. Normally you would hire a marketing team, but now as filmmakers, you don't just have to do the development and the pre-production and the filming, which you think is long enough, but actually the marketing and getting it out into the world is longer. So it becomes like another 2 years of it's
what's happened now too is that when we've done press for the festival in the past, we had a certain morning talk show that wanted to do a thing on the festival, and we were making suggestions for guests. And they're like, no, we're going to look at their social media followers, and that's how we were based it on who they invited from the festival. They literally looked at their Twitter followers, Instagram followers, and that's how they booked the 3 people that they had on the morning show. I was like, wow. And that really hit me about how things have changed, and just like, and then it's just like how it is what it is. That's the way it is now.
Popularity is the ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See how relevant this is?
Right.
I know.
I have an interesting question then for Danny, but it also applies to you, Sylvia, too. Because you were 2 years out, you said, nope, forget it, and then decided to come back for this. Why did you decide to pull not only double duty, triple duty, writing, acting, and producing? And then same as you said, because you went director and produce. How did you handle both of those positions while you were doing the film?
I think that's why I never considered directing it, because that was too much. I knew I needed someone like Sylvia to be there on set with me directing my performance. So thank God. Thank God I did, because that would have been a nightmare. I think with producing, Sylvia's been more of a mentor to me in that regard, because I've really learned through her what that actually is. Going into this movie, I really didn't know what a producer did fully. I didn't really understand it. Now I really understand the differences between producer, associate producer, executive producer, what all these titles mean, and they hold a lot of weight. So that was the producing end. On the writing end, there are so many influences of how this came to be, because I was still taking Craigslist jobs here and there, but in New York.
Even more fun.
Yeah, even more characters in that city. So I was writing scripts for a guy and making $100 for like 5-page scripts, these little horror scripts where he gets to be the villain. And that was fun, and it was fun cash. And that was really where this idea kind of sprouted from. So taking that idea, it wasn't until I think a year later that I started developing it, but I just knew the idea was great. So I think I started writing it, and then it just grew from there. I think sometimes as a writer, you just have to break the seal and start from an idea, and then it took off. The idea just took off, and it wrote itself.
So was this what kind of drew you back to the film world? Was this project, or was that already happened before when you took that sabbatical? Like, did you come back? Like, was that the seed that brought you back, or was there kind of
to make this
not
film?
fully? I'd say maybe 50%. No, it wasn't actually. I had a script I wrote before I even took the break. I had a script that I had worked on for 5 years, workshopping it, doing script readings with a full room of people.
Wow.
That script I'm just now starting to raise financing for, but that was called The Quick Fix. And I worked so hard on that, and I was so enmeshed in the world, and I couldn't separate myself from it, because it's a little autobiographical in ways as well. And so I think I was just too close to that story to make it, but that was really the one that I wanted to do. That was my merger back in. Like, okay, I worked on the script for so many years. I got to do something with it. And then I had listened to a podcast saying, go make another movie, go write something else. Don't make your baby project first. Go make all your mistakes on another film. So I wrote this with that intention in mind.
It's weird how fate takes over sometimes.
Yeah.
And then how did the two of you meet? How did that start collaborating together?
John Gallagher, this filmmaker in New York City, Danny had spoken to him first. She heard him on a podcast. So podcasts really do work and get people, to think about and meet people. And, I love listening to podcasts. And so, you reached out to John, and then, John wasn't available because Danny had thought this would happen a lot quicker and on a much smaller budget. And then he suggested me, and it really happened quickly. We had like a call or two, and we both had to just say, well, okay, I'll believe you can direct this, and I'll believe you can star in it, because it's a scary thing. We didn't meet face to face for months.
Yeah.
And we were already like fully committed and working, on this journey. And then we finally met months later and to scout. And yeah, So,
Yeah.
Well, Sylvia, to come back to that first question, then, how did you handle doing directing and producing? Because sometimes they're two of the people that butt heads the most.
yes, they
So
are. So,
did it ever
well,
blur?
yeah, well, I come from a producing background. Like that's my like I could do that in my sleep. Like I've produced probably 15 or 16 features and all budget sizes, mostly from 500,000 to like 7 million. And so I knew I'm the type of director that good or bad, I can't help but produce, and I'm always producing myself, even as I'm directing. And I did bring on a producer I really respect, and I have great affection for, Michael and Jay, and this was his first. So this was his first feature as a producer. He'd been producing a travel series with me for 6 years and had line produced a Harvey Keitel film that my production company produced the U.S. portion, which was a small portion of a big World War II film. So that's how we met. But I was kind of, the producer from beginning to end, who I also, on something like this where money was so tight, I wanted to be the person saying where every penny was going to go. And I knew I could trust Michael to make sure that that's where it went and that he was handling everything to make us. But I was often in my head fighting, I want another take. You don't have time for another take. You're losing the light if you don't get going. And that happened a lot. And I wish that's also the way my brain works. I'm always like, I'm a very figure. So I'm very right, left brain. And I would love to, on my next film, it's a bigger budget and I have a really big experienced producer. And of course, I would also love to bring Michael on that as well. And I'm already talking to Danny. I've got a fun little part for her. But, I would love to be able to step down more from that. I'm going to be a producer on that as well. But I really would like to, really the way Danny said, I'm not producing while we're shooting. I would love to be able to do that. Although I know I won't be able to turn that part of my brain off.
I was just going to say, it sounds beneficial then for you to have been producer and director, because all those fights that would normally happen were already happening in your head. You
Yeah,
can just skim right over that. And
I
keep going.
know, but the producer often beat the artist out because I have
Yeah.
15 years, 20 years of experience on that. But in some ways, I think about like the knowledge of like you're losing the light if you continue to fight and shoot this shot again, you will not get that next shot. So in that regard, it was good, but in other ways, maybe I gave up an artistic shot I wanted because I was, but
because I remember that I remember days before shooting, and I remember your experience, Sylvia, with that. And I think you were I don't know if you were feeling tired or exhausted by how much producing, because just let you guys know, I stepped down as a producer a month before we started shooting. So I could prep the role, learn all the lines, like really understand the story, who this character is, dive into the social media world that I had taken a break from and understand it. So Sylvia had to take the majority of the producing work and then build the team, which bringing in Michael and one of our co-producers,
Sybil.
Great, Sybil. Yeah. And build the team that way, because I wasn't available to do it. And I just remember days before you feeling like you couldn't be as creative as you wanted to on the directing side. And that taught me a good lesson too, about in the future for myself directing, that I don't want to be producing leading up to the shoot.
Yeah, I was very thankful I had the months earlier, because I did a lot of, Daniel will probably say ad nauseum, I was tweaking moments in the script and talking through bits. So I had done a lot of my early research where I was like coming up with moments and verbs for the actors to give them notes, and thinking about influences and how I wanted to, I had like a color-coded script, and I was always walking around with my script because I had my notes, and I knew in the moment, because there was going to be so much going on and we were a tight crew, that I didn't want to forget these things, that when I'd had the leisure of that month or two in Asheville, I had a very creative kind of peaceful time where I really, thank goodness, I put that time in, and I had that script to go back to and to look at my notes and remember all that little work, because it was really hectic.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, to wrap it up then, if you could go back and redo any one thing in here,
Ooh.
production, pre-production, writing, what have you, what would be the one thing that you think you might want to change?
Oh my goodness.
I can answer that for myself, just on that exact same topic, because I remember I'm having a lot of flashbacks right now. Because we were tweaking the script, even on days of shooting, it made it really difficult. I think it made it difficult for a few of us, but especially for myself, for that exact point that Sylvia just said. I was making all my notes in the script. I printed it out. There's my hard copy. Every time we make a change in a scene, that scene has to be reprinted, which is awful because you're wasting, trees. It's bad for the environment. On top of the fact that I lose all my notes. And so I'm having to look at old versions and this new version without my own notes of how I want to play scenes and story tidbits and just stuff that I need to reference as an actor. So I found that extremely difficult. So moving forward, I think locking the script sooner would be ideal, and then letting it be, like not trying to necessarily perfect it. Though I'm grateful for what we did. I'm grateful for the story that we created in the end.
Yeah, I would agree with that a bit. That probably wouldn't be my first one, although I would like to not be doing as much of that. What happens is, you're filming, and when you have such great performances and the way Luke and Danny worked together, things kind of spiraled and grew, and it got more intense. And I remember one of the things we were trying to do was make sure that this didn't come off as a victim film. And that was a lot of the rewriting and the tweaking we were doing. As I started seeing, like, if we weren't careful, it was going to be much more like big guy beats up young, and she needed to come across really strong. And so that was around some of it. But yeah, I think for me, it'd be more of the being able to hand off more, having a little bit of a bigger budget. So Michael could have come to set earlier, and, we would have had more time to, my gosh, we didn't lock some of the locations, like the first scene of the movie, we locked the day before, and it was not at all ideal location. So having a little bit more time to, to get those locations and have a bigger team. So, yeah.
Excellent. Kelly, anything else?
I just wanted to, when I've been talking to you for the last few weeks planning this, you've been traveling all over the world here. You've been playing so many different festivals and all that. And is there anything, what do you have coming up for the film that you want to talk about, or if you can, or what's next for you with this?
Well, gosh. So I think, this is really towards the end of it. We've been, in quite a few continents showing the film. And we're just talking to distributors, and we're really hoping to have news, distribution news very soon.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Well, on that note, ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And do remember,
thank you.
now that you're a Bits alum, come on back anytime and chat about stuff
Love
you have
to.
coming up anytime.
Cool.
Sure,
And
that'd
remember,
be
you
great.
got to follow her film. We got to do the social media plug.
Exactly. Yes. Hashtag follow her.
Yeah, and if you did just watch the movie, we would love you to rate it on IMDb. That helps independent
Yes.
filmmakers a lot,
It
actually, and Rotten
That's
Tomatoes.
brilliant.
Yeah.
That does not get raised enough, how
Yeah.
much that affects things. But you're
Yeah,
right.
it really does.
It really does. Yeah.
It's a tool everybody uses. So,
No question.
all right, ladies, thank you so much. Kelly, thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
me.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Rob.
Yes. Thanks, Kelly, for inviting the film. It means
Great.
a lot.
Great having you. Yep.
That's it for Bits Radio. We'll see everybody.